Welcome to the scorching arena of valor and the crucible of courage. This is the Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Here, in the inferno of life's greatest challenges, heroes are shaped and legends are born. Every episode is a torchlight of wisdom, casting a glow on the paths walked by those who've braved the flames and emerged stronger. In this furnace of fortitude, we'll explore tales of resilience, bravery, and the unyielding human spirit. Each guest brings their own spark of insight, lighting up the darkness and guiding us through the smoke of adversity. With Fireman Rob at the helm, prepared to delve into conversations that smolder with significance and stories that kindle the soul. It's not just a podcast, it's a beacon for all who seek to rise from the ashes and glow with purpose. So stoke the fires of your curiosity and ready your heart for tales of triumph and transformation. The flames are roaring. The stage is ablaze. Welcome to the Forged in the Fires podcast. Let the journey begin.
All right, welcome back to Forged in the Fires podcast. I'm your host, Fireman Rob. Today's guest, if you looked at his resume, you would get tired as well. He has been in the U.S. Navy. He's been a firefighter. He's been a chief. And now he is an amazing individual who works with Team Rubicon. We're going to get into more of that, but I want to leave all the information that Nick is going to give us. Nick Mrzlak, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, Rob, thanks for having me on. Looking forward to the conversation.
I love that. I love your background. I asked what's the greatest accomplishment, and I'm just going to go through what you listed off because it's hilarious. Because it's like, okay, that's not you. How many lifetimes have you lived? Navy veteran, retired fire battalion chief, paramedic, SWAT, current director of mission support at Team Rubicon. When you were younger, were you this active?
That's an interesting way to say it, but I don't know. I guess I've always been active, but a lot of that career path, it wasn't by choice. It's just opportunities presented themselves to me, and I kept taking advantage of them. And it one thing led to another, and gave me the background that you're talking about right there.
I love that. And then, when you decided to go into the Navy and you were a hospital corpsman, like, what was that premise behind serving in the Navy? What made you want to go into the Navy?
So, Rob, when I finished high school, wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. Ended up with a full ride scholarship and made it just a couple months in and realized that college was not going to be the right fit for me.
Yeah.
When I was spending that downtime between college, or I tried a couple different college programs. It just wasn't working, and I decided to go a different path. I'd been interested in the military, had already done the ASVAB tests, and had the recruiters calling me. I just needed that extra shove over the line.
Yeah.
And they presented me with an opportunity to go into a program in boot camp where we were all going to go through boot camp together, core school together, and then do buds together. This was early on, nice. back in 1991, so it's a while back. And that was like the impetus. I was looking for adventures. I came from a small town, Southern Colorado. That's kind of normal for small center of the country folks, is to go to the Navy, the furthest thing out there.
Yeah.
And
a lot of ocean around you.
Yeah, exactly. So that looked like the greatest adventure. Had a really interesting naval experience. Did only 4 years. I got in during Desert Storm, and Desert Storm ended prior to me finishing up all of my training path. And in that, the program that I was in also ended, and so I took a traditional Navy path, and ended up. They told me one day, they're like, "Hey, your program is over. You need to pick a new place to go for next week." And so, being from a small town in Colorado, I didn't have a lot of naval knowledge, but they told me I could go to a place in Maryland And I thought, well, that sounds pretty good. I mean, the only place in Maryland I know is Annapolis.
Yeah.
And you know, for whatever reason, I ended up at actually Bethesda Naval. I was
Okay.
in Balboa. I ended up at Bethesda Naval Medical Center, which is now the National Naval, or it's Walter Reed's National Medical Center. But back then it was the National Naval Medical Center.
Oh, okay.
And ended up there for a couple years working in critical care, and that was a pretty cool adventure. I ended up as a VIP corpsman in the post anesthesia care unit,
Oh,
and
jeez.
so my job was taking care of, admirals, senators, vice presidents. I never took care of a president, but any of the
Wow.
big wigs that came through. And a lot of what I did was spent time with them while they were recovering from spinal anesthesia. So it'd be 6 hours, 8 hours that I'd have to sit there with somebody, and I was given the opportunity to talk to some incredible people as
Wow.
a 18-year-old kid,
Yeah.
just figuring out my way. That led to a 2-year stint on a ship out of Japan. On the command ship for the Seventh Fleet was the USS Blue Ridge. It still is, I guess.
Oh, wow.
And so spent 2 years over there traveling up and down the Pacific. That particular ship does a lot of PR work, and so every 3 months or so we'd go from Russia down around Australia and back and hit every major port in between. So I got to travel all of the
Wow.
Pacific, and it started introducing me to some other stuff. It was really where I kind of started getting interested in humanitarian work, and with that ship, we were tied in with a couple of epidemiologists who were working out of Indonesia, Micronesia, and I got tied in with these guys, and they let me, start tagging along and helping as we were starting to look at some of the different disease processes that we were seeing in those parts of the world.
Oh, wow.
And between that, the Navy, the opportunity to serve, that really tied me into like, hey, there's actually a lot of work out here. This is kind of fun stuff. I can work with them. I mean, might not
Yeah.
be able to understand them, but everybody understands, help.
Right.
And so that kind of started my path looking at that avenue, and especially looking at international medicine.
That's unbelievable. I mean, when you look back at your naval career and you go, okay, kind of where you're at now and the characteristics that you have and kind of the mindset that you have, what were some things that you took away from the military and that service to be able to establish what you are?
That's an interesting question too. And I like I kind of described, I had an interesting time in the military because of the training program that I was in. I mean, starting in boot camp, honestly, we were, kind of a squared away boot camp group because everybody was specially selected,
Yeah.
which led to the command master chief picking up his last recruit unit that he was gonna lead through boot camp. Unfortunately, he was too busy to spend much time with us.
Oh, geez.
And so we basically created our own boot camp because we didn't have a lot of company commanders around to help us. The guys were just weren't around, and so we just made our own, and we all knew what we were, the program we were going into. So we kind of created our own. We had to go to the traditional classes during the day,
Yeah.
but we couldn't PT without a company commander, and with a group of folks going into that program. Well, we would create our own PT at night. We would sneak around. We'd, turn our sweatsuits, our track suits inside out so that the white navy wouldn't show, and we'd go for, runs like stealth runs on base. And back then, I was going to boot camp in San Diego. And that, if you're familiar with that facility, there's an estuary that kind of runs halfway. It splits the recruit camp in half.
Yeah.
And so we could swim back and forth across that estuary in the middle of the night, try to get our swimming in. We would do our push-ups and our pull-ups in they had, we were in an old barracks building. So in the gang shower had pipes hanging around the ceiling. So we could do our physical fitness at night and kind of stealthy. And it was a little bit of an alternative experience. And that led to the rest of those tours where I ended up in jobs with just kind of had the absence of detailed instructions, and so
Yeah.
allowed me to create my own career. And so a lot of the jobs that I took on weren't some traditional out of the book, there was no checklist. I just made it up as I went, and saw what the need was and did something. And then the whoever the supervisor at whichever element of that, saw that that was working and let me continue on doing that. And
Oh,
that
jeez.
really led through my fire service career, what I did with medicine, and then on into Team Rubicon. Of just it Opportunity keeps presenting itself like that, where there's a vacancy, and
Right.
I found a solution for it.
How did you find like that experience from when you were kind of not in the leadership role, but you kind of found yourself as a leader kind of in the weeds when you were a fire battalion chief? How did that influence how you were in that leadership now as a chief?
That my fire crew is another pretty interesting one, and again, I was given a lot of opportunities. In the west side of the country, 20-year retirement is pretty normal,
Hmm.
and because of that, you have a lot of turnover and a lot of rapid promotion. I was able to promote really quickly. I wasn't really aspiring to promote, but I was recruited to promote. The youngest captain, was the youngest battalion chief, and within those fields, in that biography, like an example, you'll see there's a technical services battalion
Right.
chief in that biography. That was another job that I created. I was a battalion chief. They needed a training chief. I said, well, I won't be just a training chief, but if you let me take over all of the special operations, I'll do that.
Right.
And training will fall under that. And so within that, all the technical rescue, the hazmat, the tactical medicine, all of our special programs, as well as training. So it was another one of those opportunities where there was a vacancy, a void, and if I was willing to do it, they were willing to let me, and that kind of just gave me another pathway. So it's just looking for those opportunities where we talk a lot about never step over a problem.
Right.
If you just look around a little bit, you can see where the gap is, and if you have the right motivation and the right leadership, a lot of times they'll let you in, and you run into a lot of roadblocks in that too.
Right.
um, Give you some examples from the Navy, but at one point towards the end of my time in the Navy, they told me that I wasn't allowed to go to any more training because I had trained too much.
Are
And
you
so
serious?
there are some roadblocks once in a while, but for the
Uh,
most part, if you have the right intentions and the right leadership, they'll support you and endorse you and push you forward.
what does that mindset look like? Because there's a lot of people that say, yeah, I mean, there's challenges that are going to come at me. Why am I always looking for opportunities? What does that mindset look like to be able to say, you look at those challenges as opportunities?
Yeah, I don't know that I have a really good explanation for that. I think it's just I've never seen it any other way. I
Yeah, that,
mean,
that makes sense.
you end up in a situation, and you can either succeed or give up.
Yeah.
Um, in my line of work, it was, I mean, some of those, and you've been in this career, you know what give up looks like, and it doesn't work out so hot for us.
No, it doesn't. That's why I love when you put on there no challenges, just lots of opportunities. I love that mindset. It's such a positive mindset, but also I mean I can imagine in your careers you've had some things that have messed with your mental side. You've had things that have hampered you that way to continue that mindset of opportunity because I know I struggle with that too. To continue that mindset of opportunity, have you given yourself like you know different mental talks or how do you continue to have that opportunity mindset even when you see things that you really don't want to see, especially like with Team Rubicon stuff?
Again, I wish I had a really good answer for you, but I think I might just be wired that way.
Yeah,
And
that
and that there might not be, it's not something conscious necessarily. Uh, it it's just in my mind. I mean, hey, here's an adventure. Here's a way to be successful. I really just want to see this thing come to fruition. I want to see these people helped, and if not me, then who?
oh, I love that.
So
Yeah.
I figure, like, I mean, let's jump in, let's get on with it, and see what we can make out of this.
uh, so you said you weren't going to give me a good answer but you just did. If not me, then who? I like that because that's so important for people to understand. It's like you can't wait for that opportunity. You have to say, it's my turn. I want to get on to Team Rubicon because um, it's such a powerful organization and I don't think a lot of people understand what it is or who's behind it. Can you give me just a brief overview of Team Rubicon? What the organization is and really who it helps.
Sure. So Team Rubicon is a veteran-led humanitarian organization that works with global communities before, during, and after disasters and crisis. We started in 2010. The founders were honestly a couple of Marines. Uh, Jake Wood among them was given basically, in 2010, really about this time of year, it was in January, the first part of January 2010, there was a huge earthquake in Haiti, in Port-au-Prince. And Jake, Will McNulty, a couple of their buddies, saw what was happening on the TV and thought, man, we got to do something. We can see how bad this is. And they stepped up honestly on their own with a couple of rucksacks, not knowing what their mission was, and got down. They ended up in the Dominican Republic and were able to hike their way down to Port-au-Prince. That at the Dominican Republic, at the border there's a river, and crossing that river, they look to each other, and looking at military history, as a lot of Marines do, talked about Julius Caesar crossing the river Rubicon and the point of no return. Once we cross this border, we're all in. And they made that commitment to go down there. What they recognized when they were down there is, if you take military veterans who are used to working in austere conditions, you pair them up with first responders who are used to working in earthquakes and whatever catastrophe, and put those two groups together, they can be really successful in disaster response, where it's a true, like, volatile, uncertain environment.
Right.
They can make something successful out of that. When they finished up with the work that they were doing in Port-au-Prince, they kind of put their heads together and, like, hey, this is a recipe that we could actually make something out of, and they turned it into a veteran-led response organization for disasters, really focusing at that time on international disasters and medical relief work. And so the first couple of years, they went all in on that, and they found themselves in Pakistan, in Myanmar. They found themselves, doing this operation, that operation. So early on, back in 2011, I was teaching tactical medicine classes, and I ran into these guys at the Special Operations Medical Association conference they used to have. Used to be down in Tampa back then.
Yep.
And got to talking with a couple of the guys, and they're like, hey, you would be the perfect fit for an upcoming operation. And they recruited me. I'd been teaching a paramedic program for the local college. I was still a active firefighter. I was still a battalion chief at the time, and still working, but I was able to sign on and spend a month with them down in Haiti, training students to be EMTs. They wanted a little bit of defensive tactics. They were trying to find the right recipe. And so, a couple of PJs, there was me, there was some Army Ranger guys that were down there. There were, just a handful of folks that were used to working, but they all had a medical background.
Right.
And we went down and we taught EMT classes for about 50 students. Some of the most remarkable people I've ever met. These students were great, right? Like, through an interpreter, we're teaching these classes. And, I'd brought down, old textbooks from the college, the samples that the salespeople give you and what have you. So I had textbooks for them, and these kids were down there. They were taking just, elaborate notes with detailed, every picture that was in the book. They would draw the picture in their notebooks. These kids were amazing, the best students I'd ever met, beautiful people. And it was the start of what just inspired me. It was like, here's this, environment where we can actually help. I mean, these are great people. We only see a tip of the iceberg from what we see on the news, but when you get to meet the actual people, the responders, no matter where you are in the world, you recognize that they're pretty similar. They're really good people that really want to try to help.
Right.
And so that's really the start of where I ended, got started with Team Rubicon, and so it leads into the rest of the story with Team Rubicon. So as Team Rubicon began to grow, we recognized that the veterans paired up with first responders was a good partnership, and about that same time, there was a couple of tornadoes in the U.S. and Team Rubicon recognized, Jake and the guys were like, hey, not just can we help, out in the international space, we could help here at home in the US.
Right.
And we started working more domestically. That really started to grow what Team Rubicon was. And from that, humble beginning of a handful of veterans, first responders responding and just trying to figure out what the humanitarian environment was, grew into something that today is now 180,000 volunteers spread across all
Jeez.
50 states.
Wow.
And all walks of life. And there's about 60% veteran. The rest come from everywhere in any they're coming from all corners of the country. And we train those folks up. We give them, depending on their interests, it can be everything from basic demolition and salvage operations, all the way through chainsaw operations that would look similar to like a wildland firefighter, an S212 type course, but we modify it slightly so that we can use it in the tornado and hurricane environment where you have different forces on the trees and the components of construction that you'll be cutting through. We respond to floods, to fires, both before the fire to do a lot of mitigation work. After the fire, we won't respond to a fire. There's already
Right.
firefighters to do that. But after a fire, there's a lot of cleanup work, and we can help with hazard trees. We can help with demolition of destroyed homes, things like that. So we run heavy equipment. We provide the training for the volunteers. The volunteers are able to go out and it costs nothing to volunteer. We take care of their expenses while they're there. We live a pretty Spartan lifestyle. We're usually set up in cots in a church gymnasium or wherever the heck we happen to be.
Yeah.
And food is a lot of times whatever's donated to us, but the work we're able to do is pretty remarkable. I mean, it's you get some trained folks out there with a little bit of experience, a lot of people bringing whatever their life experience is from the real world, and we plug that into TR, and then we mix all that up with some pretty advanced technology, and we're able to put out a product that is unique in the response arena right now, and especially in the volunteer and the
by far
what we call the VOAD, the voluntary organizations assisting in disaster. The product that we're able to put out between the actual labor of the volunteers and the metrics, the analysis of the operations, and then what we provide back to the communities, so they can see not just the benefit that we did physically, but also the value of that in their match for like FEMA reimbursement.
Wow.
So it's kind of a whole of the community response that we're able to provide. And I talked about 180,000 volunteers spread out across the country. The goal of the organization is to have the most local response possible. And we recognize that all disasters, start and end locally. And, in the middle, you're going to get FEMA, you're going to get all of these other people that parachute in.
Right.
But if we have people who are plugged into those communities, then we don't leave. We're there before, they know who we are. And when the event happens in that particular community, they know they can reach out to us, and we'll provide. We can't do everything, but we can do some things, and we can those few things we can do, or we can do them pretty well.
And the lasting effect that Team Rubicon has, that's a huge aspect that I see, when I follow on, on the social media or on LinkedIn, is that lasting effect. Because like you said, FEMA will come in for a little while, and other people will parachute in and come in for a little while, and then they'll leave and they'll wait for the next big one. Whereas you guys finish the job. What does that mean to you, like being in that in the leadership role of Team Rubicon, to have that be seen as you guys finish the job? You don't just go when it looks good.
Yeah, especially in today, with the way the news cycle goes, I mean, even if we look at hurricanes as big as, you know, I want to call it Hilton, but Helene and
Helene,
Milton,
yep, yep,
they were out of the news cycle in 7 to 10 days. It was competing with an election, all of the other the wars, all the other stuff going on.
right,
So the majority of disasters that happen in the United States are really, unrecognized. Nobody really is talking about them. They barely hit the news. And so if we can go in and provide that support, if we can have those connections with those communities, and we then when an event happens, we can provide that support. Not only is it just supporting the community, but the greatest part of service when we work on that with a homeowner who sees a stranger that, provides a helping hand and whatever that might be,
right,
is it's hope. You give them
yeah,
some hope, and that's the key
yeah,
to the whole thing, right? Like if a homeowner is there and I mean, you don't know what to do. You've lost everything. It's
right,
all, I mean, it's in a dumpster, it's underwater, it's gone, everything, all of your stuff, all of your life, everything you do. And if somebody will just start that chain reaction, that hope, the catalyst, then those people will start to recover on their own more quickly as well. And I think
right,
that's really part of the key. There's the tactical part of what Team Rubicon does, before, during, and after disasters, where we'll try to stop the damage to a house after a flood or a hurricane. We'll, do the removal of the soaked components of construction, the drywall, the insulation, the carpet, the furniture. We'll do all of those physical things. But then we start to put them on the path, give them the connection so they understand the other entities within the response framework that can
right,
help them get back on their feet. And it might take years for them to get back to normal. And again, we can't help everybody, but we can help some of them.
right,
And those people that we are able to help, the communities see that, those people tend to pay that forward. They end up helping their neighbor. And in the end, our goal is to make those communities more resilient for the next time. And you start to see that when you look at Florida, and they're, right now we're series of hurricanes over the last several years. Those communities that we've worked in, I think of the communities down by like Fort Myers and Punta Gorda that have gotten hit basically 3 years in a row.
right,
And they've become more resilient down there. They see how to do it. Now, when something happens, they're able to
that's
help their
awesome,
neighbors. They get their houses, mucked out by themselves. They've been quicker at stopping the damage. And the greater community, again, in the Florida example, where we see at the county level and the state level, where now they're starting to figure out that, hey, these volunteer organizations bring a lot of value to, our city or county or state. And if we support them, they'll stay here longer and they'll do more work. And so we'll
wow,
see the state of Florida. This year, we met with Governor DeSantis, and he provided the equivalent of a base camp, like a FEMA base camp, with trailers and food and
wow,
showers, laundry, the whole facilities, just for volunteers. And not just Team Rubicon. This could be all of the faith-based volunteers, any
yeah,
number of volunteers who come in. But if you're with a recognized organization, those states are supporting us better, and that helps in that state recovering. So basically, to answer your question, where I see that is, the homeowners start to become more resilient. They start to have hope. They are more prone to recover. The communities understand how better to help the citizens within their community, and the states, and then even the federal agencies are recognizing it. They're starting to support it. They're considering it more and more as part of their response. And it's greater than any one entity can do. Really,
yeah,
it's greater. If you look at Helene and Milton, it's greater than all the entities can do. That'll
right,
take years to recover. But the more those communities work with organizations like ours, the more resilient they're going to be. The quicker they have the ability to recover, and at least they're doing something. Because without that, those
right.
folks are all just stuck out there with the trees on their house and their roofs tore off, and they really don't have an avenue to recover.
With no end in sight. You talk about hope and resilience, and I love this because Team Rubicon not only helps the communities, but talk to me more about how it helps the veterans have that purpose. you have a lot of veterans within your volunteers. You have a lot of veterans within your leadership, senior leadership. How does that hope and resilience trail on through those veterans who are looking for that identity, that looking to be part of something bigger than themselves?
Yeah, Rob, we talk about this a lot because, you know, whether it's a veteran or any kind of emergency responder, or just people in from any walk of life. So I don't want to just talk about veterans because there's a lot of folks
Right.
who suffer through the same types of lack of purpose. And so having a mission like Team Rubicon does as much for the responders as it does for the people you're helping. When you go out there and it's total charity, you're not getting paid for it. The goal is just to help people out of the goodness of your heart, strangers that you've never met before. You're not going to get anything out of this response. Really, what you get paid is in hugs and gratitude from
Wow.
those homeowners, and that mission, that the sense of purpose that you talk about, really gives you a reason to kind of look. And you see this even in the the firefighting community, right? Like where
Right.
you start to get to the routine where day after day you're going to overdose, you're going to domestic, you're going to all of these things that are, it's not why you signed up to be a firefighter.
Right.
And you start to lose your soul over that a little bit. And when you have that opportunity to volunteer for people who really have a true need, who have truly lost everything, and you can provide that hope for them, that drives your soul. That really gives you the mission, that gives you that sense of purpose. And you take that home, you carry that with you when you leave that operation. um, what we see with the veteran community, as well as all the first responders and everybody else, is you develop this relationship with your fellow responders, with
Yeah.
the mission that you have. All of a sudden, you've got a whole community of people who experience the same thing as you, and just like sitting around the table eating ice cream at the end of a shift, with Team Rubicon or with any number of volunteer organizations, when you sit around with that community of like-minded people, you
Yeah.
develop a sisterhood, a brotherhood, you develop that relationship with people. And so our volunteer opportunities are usually 7 days long. We'll send volunteers out to the field. They travel, and then 5 days of work, and then travel home. So 7 day deployment. Over the 5 days that we see those folks work together, they build lifelong relationships.
Wow.
And I still have, relationships with the people that I responded to Haiti with back in 2012.
Yeah.
We're best of friends. We're constantly talking. We might be separated by, different parts of the country, but you develop something, and it's no different than being with any of the other the response services or the military. That that relationship you build with your coworkers, your partners, the people that you respond with, that bond that develops through really horrible situations,
Right.
is something that it's not, I don't know how to really explain it, but it's something visceral that is really embedded in your soul. And nobody else can ever experience that other than those people who happen to be at that particular event.
Yeah.
And there's always another event, and
That's
there's
so
always
true.
another opportunity.
I love that it is embedded in your soul, and it's something that just continues on. And I love what you guys are doing. Go to teamrubiconusa.org. You can find out more about how to volunteer, how to be a part of something bigger than yourself. It's been such an honor to have you on, Nick. I always end the same way, so I got 3 questions for you. You ready?
Okay,
All
Rob, let's see what you got.
right, if you could go back to your 18-year-old self and give yourself one piece of advice, what would that be?
This one's kind of a softball for me. I've got a son who is a mini version of me.
Oh no.
Maybe yeah, might not be luck. He just finished up his 6 year stint in the Navy as a rescue swimmer, and
Oh,
just recently got out. And as we're talking about what his next steps are, um, I talked to him a lot about, the thing I wish I would have done, because I
yeah.
learned all of the tactics. I learned all of the technical aspects of what I was doing.
Yeah.
I learned the how really well,
Yep.
but I wish I would have spent more time learning the why.
Oh,
And
that's
that's
so good.
behind people, like, and that can be the most technical thing. If you rope rescue, and why am I using a 3-to-1? Why am I using a
Right.
5-to-1? It can be firefighting, why am I making entry to this house, or why am I doing a defensive fire attack? Why, I think, is like lost in the philosophy of not just the technical skills, but the leadership philosophy that we use to run those. And so I wish I would have spent more time on learning the why when I was younger.
Yeah.
And now I feel like I've spent the last 30 years trying to backtrack and understand, why those things happen and why we do what we do to respond to those things. So that would be my 18-year-old advice, is learn the why along with the how.
That's some good advice right there. I think 18 or 46 when I'm at.
It's
It
never
works
too
both
late.
ways. If everybody's going through challenges and struggles in their life, if you could give them 2 tips that they could incorporate into their daily life that can help them continue to move forward, that continue to just keep moving forward, finding those opportunities, what would 2 tips be that you'd have?
Things that I think about a lot are understanding risk.
Mm.
And there's a lot of different possibilities with risk. Obviously, we think about physical risk, financial risk. In organizations like mine, we think about brand risk, how
Right.
important it is, and how that works with
Yep.
a couple of firefighters make a poor choice and the whole department looks bad.
Right.
It's understanding risk and what we're going to do to abate that so that we can continue mission. So I think a lot about understanding risk and what your risk tolerance is,
Hmm.
and then how to respond through that, and that depending on the type of risk, I think it really looks at the type of courage that it takes to pull that, whatever the task happens to be. And so I think that's really important, is really because I feel like we get fed a lot of I want to say conspiracies, but like people are afraid to act,
Right.
and the risk isn't, that, like,
It's not
some of
real
that's
risk.
yeah, it's not real risk, right? So I think there's something to understanding risk. And I also feel like understanding what compels people.
Hmm.
And I think about that a lot in Team Rubicon. Now that I work full time for Team Rubicon, I work with volunteers every day. What compels a volunteer to step up, to step forward, to do, sign on, to go,
Right.
sleep on a cot, eat MREs, and, you know, pull out wet insulation from under trailer houses in Florida? What compels somebody? Because it's not money.
No.
It's there's something in service, there's something that they need to, recognize in themselves, or maybe they need recognition from, their family, from their peers. There's a lot of different things that compel all different people from all these different walks of life. And spending time understanding what compels people, I think that's probably good advice for everything that we do. It probably kind of goes back to my first your first question, understanding the why.
Yeah.
But what that is that compels people, and that probably plays in. I mean, we're gonna work with people. We have no choice. So
Right.
what's gonna compel them? Why are they gonna act the way they act? So understanding risk and understanding the what compels people, what drives people, are 2 things that I think those are worth investing time into,
Oh,
if I were
definitely.
to think of that.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. All right. This last one's going to be interesting. It could be a challenge. If you could have coffee at a firehouse table with 3 individuals, so now that any question can be asked, any question's going to be answered at a firehouse table. They can be deceased or alive. Who would those 3 people be?
So I kind of, I mean, again, I've had a unique opportunity, so I've got to talk to some really interesting people in my life, but I feel like there's a lot that I don't know. And well, I don't feel like that. I know there's a lot that I don't know. Let me correct myself. But I would kind of want to shake that up a little bit. And I'm really interested in history and practical looks at history. I feel like, I've been told half the story for my whole life. And as you start to dig into that,
so true.
I'm interested. So, one of the people that I'm really fond of, I like his books, I like his podcast, is Dan Carlin. He has a handful of podcasts. He has like a hardcore history podcast. He has a common sense podcast. He has a handful that he dabbles with, and his books are also pretty good. I'm sure they're one of his.
There's a few on your shelf.
So I feel like he's not necessarily a historian, but he's a really interesting guy who has a pretty good, real down to earth perspective,
right?
And looks at some of the big factors that change human history. So I like history. I'm also interested in science, and I've always thought that again, kind of going historical, this one is somebody that I'm just curious about, because I feel like there's not enough information. Maybe I need to dig more, but I've always felt like Nikola Tesla would be super interesting, because I feel like that
you're not getting the whole story.
Submarined a little bit, and they're only telling us half of what went down there, and so I'm pretty interested in what he would have to say. And then the other thing that I think about, I've got history, I've got science, and I think about like the future and how small and unremarkable we are as people. And I think about Neil deGrasse Tyson a lot. I feel like he tries to dumb stuff down for, folks like me to understand what it is he's talking about. But as I start to listen to him talk about the size of, the potential size, not just the universe, but everything, right?
Yeah.
It's just mind blowing. So if I were to have somebody to talk about science, somebody to talk about history, and then somebody to talk about, the philosophy of the universe, I think that would probably be a pretty interesting firehouse conversation.
And you turn off the speakers so you don't have any calls.
Yeah. Inevitably that'd be that's the way that conversation goes, is as soon as you sit down, right, the tones go off.
Yeah, he'd be telling you what the universe is really like, and then you'd be like, "Oh, hold on a second, we gotta go pick up somebody." Well, Nick, it's been such an honor to have you on today. I appreciate it. Make sure you go to teamrubiconusa.org to find out more, how you can donate, how you can be a part of being a volunteer. Keep doing what you're doing, Nick. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Rob. And hey, one last point that I didn't get to point out while we talked, but thinking about firefighters and my background, and then having that opportunity to volunteer with Team Rubicon. For any of those firefighters that are in your audience, if you want the opportunity to experience multi-day operations, working in the incident command system, and actually applying the skills and then bringing those skills back, it was really part of the key to my success when I was at my fire department, bringing the technology that we learn or that we're using in the environment that with some of the incredible partners that we have at Team Rubicon, working with Esri, with Microsoft, any number of platforms, and then bringing the skills and knowledge from volunteering for an organization like Team Rubicon back to your firehouse, to your fire department, is pretty incredible. There's nowhere else that you'll get the ICS experience. There's nowhere else where you get the technology experience that you get at Team Rubicon for free of charge. So I highly recommend it to all your firefighters. It's a game changer if you want to be a better fire department, a better fire leader.
Awesome. I love it, Nick. Thank you so much again. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening and supporting the Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Remember, don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast. And please share this episode with a friend or family member. To find out more about Fireman Rob, or if you have a question, go to www.firemanrob.com. Until next time, live your life forged in the fires.